Hello travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and guide along the way. And today we return to the second part of the conversation between Ivar Hackscher, Gilligan, and myself from a good few months ago in Stockholm. The conversation is recorded in the beautiful apartment in Stockholm, Ivar's apartment, and it was great to just recently haven't seen him again on his birthday, and was part of this beautiful celebration that Jay organized with a whole bunch of shows that I might have mentioned a little bit already. I think maybe we should get Jay on and talk a little bit about that, getting people to fly in from all over the world from Japan and from Germany and from France and from New York. People flew in from all over the world to celebrate a man, a thinker that you're going to hear again today, and an influencer in the very old-fashioned way of being a philosophically inclined and poetically and artistically expressive man that has influenced a lot of people. And to get all these people that for different reasons then gather together in a little art gallery, the fantastic place in Ulla and Sarah's, a beautiful studio in Stockholm there, and to have 5 nights in a row people gather to do a show and a showing with it specifically in mind that Ivar was going to be there, and that we're sort of celebrating his influence on all these people as he liked to think of it, trying to come to terms with all this love being poured on him, that he's kind of this then like a magnet or so that holds all of this stuff together. So that was very nice. And the conversation that we talk about, the conversation that we finish up today, it delves into something which I was particularly interested in exploring in my trip to Stockholm that time, with some of the conversations you've already heard where I'm trying to come to terms with, or to grasp and get some understanding of abstract performance and what it is, and why so often when I see let's just narrow it down to like so often when I see abstract circus work, it leaves me a little bit nonplussed. I don't quite understand what's going on. And in this one, I am throughout the conversation trying to express what it is that I am actually after. And as the conversation goes on, we land on a few things that Jay and Ivar then brings up about intention and stuff. So the conversation can feel a little bit abstract at times, but it's all trying to grapple with. And it starts out beautifully how Jay asks Ivar about how do you know what comes next? If you're doing an abstract sequence of things, which you naturally have to do in a performance, how do you know what's next? And Ivar has some interesting points of view on that, and from there we develop a long and very rich dialogue. But I can hear from listening back to it that at some point Ivar points to 5 paintings on his wall and uses them as an example. Towards the end he just mentioned and people just walking down the street, like motion in the streets, and he's then talking about the documentary In Motion by Michael Motion, where he's walking through the streets of New York and juggling. And so there's a few things here that are it's a very personal conversation between 3 people who already knows each other. So trust that the ideas and everything are actually in there, and that if you listen with goodwill, you will hopefully get a lot out of it. I certainly found it very enriching, both having the conversation and listening back to it. So let's jump into the world of ideas and explore intention, abstraction, and concrete performance.
Frodo was saying he sometimes struggles to put words in your mouth, but this idea of doing abstract work versus maybe more concrete work, like telling a story, for example, versus doing something silent that's maybe less clear what you're doing. And the only reason I want to bring it up is because I had a little intuition into maybe one other angle to attack the answer for fun, which is, Ivar has always said necessity just drives everything. Like, hey, so I'm doing this thing, it's not a concrete narrative, it's not a story where A follows, or B follows A, etc. But like, it's something more random. But then the question is, how can I know what to do if there isn't maybe a clear internal logic, like a story or something? And then it comes down to necessity, and you have to know yourself, right? And then know what's necessary somehow. And I wondered if you could tell him a little bit about necessity, and also then you could relate that with your pictures that you make, because your pictures are not. You're not making a picture of a tree, and you're not making a picture of George Washington, and you're making interpretive, abstract choices. Yeah. And how do those choices come to you? How do you know what to stitch, Ivar? Yeah. And then you normally would answer me, I do what's necessary. And that's why I thought of that.
I should do what is necessary.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
But first thing is, of course, you should absolutely first put the word necessity against or counter Schiller.
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then insist on both.
Yeah.
Insist on play is the only free area. Playing is the only free area of action that you play. You are not driven by any kind of necessity. This is first thing. And then, what is necessary in the playing? And how do you know that? And I'd say that this has to do with intuition. And intuition is exercised where? In which art form? In poetry, in language, is the best way to exercise intuition. And how do I do that? I do that by trying to say what is the right thing to say to what you have said, or to what is the situation. There is a free area of exercising intuition. What words, how does word comes into your mind? Can you exercise how words can come into your mind? And then there we should show Jay this first chapter of Science's book, because it is so clear there how he describes that the mind is a space where you can allow guests to come in or not. We generally think that what comes to our mind is what shall come to our mind. But no. It's not that. It is some thoughts that come to your mind you should not allow in your mind. And some thoughts that you need in your mind you don't find. And how do you handle that? Again, try to find the right words. And then, is there an exercise to find the right words? Yes, there is. Music. What you do when you do music, you do the right input at the right moment, in the right volume, not too early, not too late, not too strong, not too weak, not too fast, not too slow. It's really a free area again, where you can exercise intuition.
I mean, Ivar made a really genius juggling exercise for the students. Let's say you have 5 or 6 students and are standing in a line next to each other. And they each have 3 balls. And the first one does a trick. Let's say it's 1 up, 2 up. And the next one does the next trick that makes sense. but there's no logic. There's no rules.
Mm.
It's a response. It's a call and response.
It's like a juggling dialogue of some sort.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily, oh, you did 1 up, 2 up, so I'll do 1 up with the 2 up crossing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. Is you do 1 up, 2 up, and you can pick any quality of that. You can pick any reaction to that.
Mm.
And then maybe you do cross arm with 3 balls. But it can't just be random. It has to be a dialogue and a necessity and an intuition.
Mm.
And then the next person follows that along. And it's not a game of Chinese whispers where the message disintegrates, but rather it's an interpretation of what's the next thing in the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. And you did that with drawing too, right?
Yeah.
How's the drawing thing go?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That actually is a sequence of 5 pictures where she means, who made them, that it starts there and the consequence of that is this, and then it goes on until that one.
Right.
These 5 pictures.
And that's a way to get to know yourself and the
Yeah,
practice.
that's
intuition.
also a way to do it. And then there is, of course, this André Bjerke and Goethe and stuff who watches the development of the plant, how it looks when the first leaves come up, and then it comes a little further, and then it changes actually even the shape of the leaves, etc. And then it grows further, and then suddenly out comes a flower, which looks like that. And then when the flower disappears, there is in the end a fruit or a nut or something. And this evolution of metamorphosis is such a nice study of changes, where you can really see what's next in any art form. And of course, it's not by any rational or by any logic, but it is you learn by intuition.
And so when you're stitching your pictures, how do you know what to stitch?
The first thing is, sometimes it's, even if I always say I hate random, sometimes I've got so many needles loaded that I didn't use for the last picture,
right,
that I think it's a shame to throw them away. So
he puts like different colored threads and just kind of pre-prepares needles of different colors, and making a picture in the moment. Like, oh, that red, I'll use that red. But when you're done with the picture, you'll have just a leftover selection of threads.
And then maybe I start from there.
Okay.
But then the other thing is, I have an urge to make someone else's picture, or I like someone else's picture, or I like a place, or I like whatever. And then I make, I've made Cézanne, I've made Charval, I've made even some Van Gogh, and then I made this with this Berlin girl, which I told you about. And then there is always also this. You start from somewhere on the canvas and you expect a face to come up. There are faces that want to come up, and that is a fact when you draw or when you paint or whatever. Faces want to come up in pictures. And that I learned from this friend Lars Buchel in Järna, who worked with different materials to paint with. But he noticed that there is from somewhere an interest that faces come up. So you can every now and then open up that door and let come faces. But generally I
Do you ever struggle to, because you said sometimes, I get an urge to make a blue picture, whatever, who cares, pick a detail.
Yeah.
Do you ever struggle to find that urge or to recognize that urge?
That is a duty rather than an urge. I have to do that because I have to learn about the relation between colors. And so I set out with a couple of blue needles. And when they are finished, I look at it and I ask myself, what's next? What color, what wants to come now?
That's really a good way to put it, Ivar. I never thought of that, this idea of duty. Of like, okay, I have a duty, I have to explore this thing.
Yeah.
I have to tie a string to this ball. I have to follow this tunnel or this path that I see potentially in front of me, right? Like this idea.
I think of that
technique
quite a bit of what, but I keep thinking of, in the podcast I have described it as the kind of contract that I have with the audience, and the contract that I have to fulfill with them is that when they in any, like for them, they are in a sense sacrificing maybe money to see it, but often it's not, but they're sacrificing mainly time and attention.
Yeah.
They're offering me their attention, and for this sacrifice, like with every sacrifice that you do, in a sense, I mean, maybe it's not a sacrifice, it's also like as they do that, when you're just sacrificing your time and attention, it's a little bit like prayer. You don't sacrifice an animal anymore, you sacrifice your time and attention in prayer or contemplation. And when you do that, you are in a sense expecting something to come back. So I know that I have a duty to give them something back for this sacrifice of time, and to value the time and attention that they give me, which has led me to this thing of going, the time that I have spent with them need to leave them enriched, is the word that I have found that covers it the most, because I don't just want it to be like that they're happy or that they are angry or that they are, but that somehow enriched, and I attempt to do it so that ultimately it will be that emotions is the first thing. That's how they meet my character, and that they enrich it somehow emotionally. They will be enriched emotionally but their emotions being strong during while I do. And there is also needing to be ideas in what I do. So I enrich them with surprising them when I do something that seems quite idiotic. All of a sudden there is like, oh, this is a nice idea. And the idiocy helps hiding that it's a nice idea sometimes. And the whole act that I do is driven by my will and my emotions and everything. But if I am very good with my emotions and with my thinking, sometimes I can make them actually want to do something beyond just say that they thought this was nice, but that they go out and think of something differently, bring a different feeling out into the world, or that they actually do something, which is like a more difficult step to put something into the world. And if this is the contract, this is like my duty and how I see this goes. And then sometimes this works and sometimes it does not work so well. Then they just look at me and they go, that was fucking weird. Now let's get a hot dog.
I don't think you should avoid the word sacrifice. I tried to show Jay this lecture in Berlin by Steiner, which is called the Wesen der Künste, Konsternas Wesen.
Oh yes, I have it in my bag at his house actually.
Yeah, and in some way I failed because he didn't like it. But the whole idea is that you have a contract with the art form. You have a contract with the art form, and therefore I say duty. And when Malevich, he did this journey, he came more and more into, he wanted to find out what is the nature of the colors. And he started to make one color versus white, or some other color versus white. And then he came in the end to black versus white. And then the final painting was a white square on a white screen. And then he didn't paint for 15 years. And then he started painting nature again, landscapes.
Wow. You see, it's good I didn't read that thing. I
Like,
would not juggle for 15 years.
But he found a line of thinking and then took it all the way until the end, and we kind of joke about, oh, I got to the final page of Facebook, or I got the last page of the internet. He actually painted all the paintings that belonged. He took this idea all the way to the end. But I think you might maybe react better to Steiner wrote his first essay on art and aesthetic, called Goethe as the father of a new aesthetic in 1888. And I think maybe this speaks more to you because
Yeah.
you are more concrete in how you like things. And here he builds up a bunch of ideas. He talks about it in Goethe. He also talks about Schiller, that the court of play is in this, of what play is. And he also then talks about, from Goethe's point of view, of what art and the artist's role is and everything. But it's built up in a more...
And from there comes this, what we have been talking about a lot of times, that for so and so long time we have used the art forms. It's now about the time that the art forms can use us. We have been using tones or words or colors or whatever tools to show this or that we want to show. But what do they want to show? And then we had long conversations about wooden balls versus metal balls versus other kind of metal balls versus glass balls versus etc., to find out how does this ball want to be juggled versus that ball, or what is the ideal shape, what shape does a club want to have. And he made so many different strange clubs, some of them so nice that they could sit in each other on his head and all. And I mean, these are also kind of duties. We have to find out what the art forms really is there for. What do they want to express in themselves? And then ultimately, of course, they want to show, or they are perfect for showing whatever.
Yeah.
So when I start to make a picture, I try to find out what does it want to become. And generally I need a motive, so often I take a photo from Iceland or a photo from someone else's picture and start not to copy it, but to go by inspiration from it.
And this is such a cliche question, but I'm going to ask it anyway to be complete here. And when someone looks at that picture, what do you have any hope or desire or wish, or what should they see? As an art, you made that picture, you stitched it with your hands. Now I'm going to look at it, Frodo's going to look at it. What do you have any sort of comment on what we might see? Or what you hope we see or hope happens?
No, not much, but little. I hope it's not dirty, I hope it's clean. I hope it's not a lie. I hope it is true in some way. I hope it brings what you said just. It might be there is an idea or an impulse rather, hiding in it in some way, that when you look at it, I should go and maybe. That would be nice.
Because it's interesting, because I am so carefully crafting my words and everything in what I want to say and what I want to do. But Jay has been helping me look at the show that I did 10 years. The video is 10 years ago, but as it turns out, I actually started sort of a year and a half or so before doing that show, and I put it together. And then you were looking at this rope act that I might show you, but no, it's not the rope, you were looking at the spoon, at this act and then he looked at this one from 10 years ago, but in this one I was speaking Norwegian, because the show was in Norwegian, in Norway, and then I sent you another link, which was like 5 or 6 years later.
Yeah, like 6 years, yeah.
And how much that act had developed and grown. The basic idea and even the basic words, I would say, would be 85% at least the same, but it has grown so much. And this was the words that you kept using about the show. It's like, and then you do the magic act and it's just you being you. Like you start out with the devil stick, and I don't know what to say about this one because this is not quite me. But then comes this bit, and now I know why you did that first bit, to get into it. So there's something there where because of the different kind of art form that performance is, I get the chance to do the act again and again, and in encountering the audience, like when your viewer is watching your picture, they have a response to the picture, but the picture remains the same and doesn't sort of alter itself. It's like the next time you see that thing, you're altered and you bring something new to the picture, but the picture remains what it is. But my art form, in the encounters with them, with the audience, I refine and find myself more and more within this structure. Because it just struck me that I also have that act that's in the show that I did when I talked about cancer and stuff in 2006. So you saw a version from 2013, which was 5 years, and then you saw the 5 years before.
Yeah.
But I actually have one that's 7 years before that again with this act, and I'm sure the act seems like the seed, and then it grows with the first leaves of the plant. And this is a big thing in my mind. I've talked about it a bit, and one of the next things I'm going to talk about is about the act as an organism, as a plant, or as something which grows.
This is so great. This is really so great.
Because I think of it like that the act is born when you create it, when you do the first performance, it comes out. I don't know what it is, but it grows, and each day is in a little bit like every time I perform the act, it's grown one more day. And then every season that I have done, when I did it for 5 months, I did it every day. Then it's like, it changes. It's not a toddler anymore. It now knows how to walk, and it knows more. And then the act grows up and they mature or something.
Yeah.
And I lost a little bit what I was going to say, but just this thing that the act kind of grows and that you go into it. And this is a fundamental difference, I think, between the artwork as an object and the artwork as a process in time, a shared experience between a performer and an audience.
And it's the Derek Delgadio thing, just to say, because Ivar saw the Derek Delgadio in and of itself show on TV, where the two things, Derek was joking, but he had done the show 500 times, and he always said, yeah, after I'd done the show 100 times, I thought I knew what it was, but man, when I did it 200 times, then I knew. But then it turns out, after I'd done it 400 times, then I really knew what it was, and being convinced each time that, like, oh, how was I so dumb 200 shows ago?
Yeah.
And of course, if he would have kept going, that would have kept changing. And the other thing that his friend said was, from the first run in the Geffen Playhouse in LA, before he went to New York off-Broadway, because he ran it in Geffen Playhouse like, a couple months or something, and then he went to off-Broadway, and his friend had seen it in LA and then went to New York to see it, and his friend said, it's the same show, you didn't change anything, but it's so much better now.
Yeah.
And of course, it's like your act that you say, I saw it on the video from 2013, and then 6 years later, it was the same act. It was the same premise.
It also changed.
And it changed, but it was the same act.
Yeah. So it's so in a sense, I then think of it where the act as an entity in itself is being itself differently. Now, it is the same thing, and I am the same thing, but 7 years ago I was not the same cells. I'm like, and in 7 years more, I am still a new person, but there is something in me which I would go, a lot of, even within Buddhism and stuff, they argue that there is no self inside, or the Christians talk, there's no spirit above the soul or whatever, but there is something in me that I go, there's something that goes throughout me that I feel, unless I am completely on an illusion that I think it is. But then there's with the act too, there is something in there, but there's also something more. And that last time it was less than this time. But sometimes maybe this is what is so nice then, that it has gone that way, that you don't see the one that I sent you and you go, oh, it's gone the wrong way.
Yeah.
You were so good in 2005 years before, and then I looked at the new one, I go, oh, what we need to do is to find what you have lost. Right. That's at least nice, that it's like, it goes in that direction, that you go, it is more itself, not less itself.
Great point, yeah. Yeah.
There is, for fine arts, it's much easier. I mean, there are some pictures that I do again and again.
Yeah, I mean, are you ever, so I'm frequently jealous of of art forms that leave a trace, a permanent record.
Yeah.
Are you ever jealous of us?
Yes, of course.
Why?
I have no place for all this shit.
Okay, fair enough.
You get things everywhere, yeah.
I was just in our studio today with Eric's Ghost Cubes. I get what you mean.
Yeah,
So many,
exactly.
I get it.
But there is, for example, one theme. There is a story by Henry Miller which is called "The Laugh at the Bottom of the Ladder."
Oh yes.
It's a beautiful story.
Yes, yeah.
I so wanted circus people to make this act,
Yeah.
to make this play, this theater play, as a circus. But I stitch this picture. I've done it 5 or 6 times. Every now and then I say I do that. And I have some friends, or at least one friend, she is going out into the garden and paints the same apple tree from March to September every day.
Wow.
And it's the same thing. She's doing it in aquarelle, so it's not very big business. It's done in 40 minutes. But still, it's the same thing again and again and again. And with music, there is this again and again and again.
Absolutely.
And we all have opinions about, is Casals better than this Ono, this Japanese guy who also plays the cello, etc. And so there is the repetition is wonderful. Repetition is wonderful, absolutely. And it strikes me now that we could at one time have decided that, in this school, when we do juggling here, there is only 3 objects.
Yeah.
There's
Sure.
only 3 objects.
Sure.
Because when I see West doing these 3 balls or 3 clubs in so many ways,
Yeah.
and he learns a lot by doing it with just 3.
Yeah.
And it's heartwarming, really. You get enthusiastic about what is to be found in limitation.
Yeah.
Limitation and repetition is great for the artist.
Limitation is now for me such a big part of my interest as well. I genuinely think that creativity is a form of limitation. What we just talked about before of do anything, there you go. And now it's like, but if you say, you narrow it down, then it's like, you can use these 3 objects, I give you 5 minutes, now use these objects in the way that feels most valuable to you.
Right.
And the limitations of that allows for something to come, and then you often then find, and this is some of the language that Eric was talking about yesterday, you go, certain limitations, it's like by the time it becomes 3, the possibilities become endless, and to unlock those is another thing. Just like watching skill, we connect to this, and I think also to watch something which has been thought through to the end, or that just to watch or meet someone who has thought about it deeply is also profound. That there is a sense of kind of wisdom in skill as well when you see Wes do more than you would ever imagine be possible with 3 objects, or yourself. That there's something in the exploration of those that, but anyway, I get off the track, but this limitation, and then that through that there can be real mastery as well. How any sport is a form of limitation, and this goes back to rules being there are the characteristics of what play is. It has to be self-motivated, and one of the other ones is that there are rules. There is always rules within the game. It's not just, it's free play for the children, but there are rules, and oftentimes more than half the game will be everybody, okay, you decide when it's nighttime, and you decide when it becomes daytime again, and I am the mother, and they organize all of this. But then once they finally start to play, if somebody all of a sudden goes, and this will be my horse, then all the rules
get modified to include the horse in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be playing the game, and there will be rules, but they can always change. But we need to know what we're playing, and it's through the rules that the game can truly emerge. Like
Yeah.
football comes through, only is football because of the limitations of
Yeah.
the rules.
Mm. You talked about skill. You said the word skill again. You said the word skill, and I was just going to ask Ivar. What's the place for virtuosity? For example, in music these days, or classical music, there's the virtuoso of the Paganini, and what's the place of that? And you kind of already answered it a few weeks ago. I should record it so I don't forget, because it was I've used your answer a few times, and you said, I was asking you about this show on the boat on Viking Line that used to be organic and real and humble, and now it's this sort of Las Vegas show business glitz and glamour, and we're all perfect. And you said, yes, well, back 300 years ago, perfection was what people wanted to see because it didn't really exist so ubiquitously.
Mm-hmm.
But then this day and age, perfection is not what we need to see. Is that a relationship then? Is that some sort of answer you would have if I would say, what's the place of virtuosity in art today? And I guess you could relate virtuosity to skill then, or would you say this idea about perfection, or?
Yeah, and it's another virtuosity. Of course, you need to know how to play the violin if you will play the violin. But I can be moved by your strange attempts to do something with the violins, even if you can't play it. But if you really want to do, for example, music that already exists on the violin, then the virtuosity is not that you can do the Paganini thing, but that you can do the Casals thing. You can bring in your warmth into the music, that it comes out. You can give life to the music, and you can give life to the music in a way that the music gives life to the ears, to the senses that watches what happens. And life is the code word, I would say. And life generally has to do with warmth also when we talk about art. But the virtuosity is the virtuosity of bringing out what is in this instrument, piece of music, person, ears that listen. So it's all of these pieces. It's John Hooker, the audience thing. It is, I can really make this poor plastic violin sound like a Stradivarius, and etc., etc.
So then, in terms of pure skill, or just pure displays of skill, it's what place does that have in today's world? I go out and I do 10 rings, then I do 11, then I do 12. Is that a thing to do?
No.
In terms of
You
art?
can do 10 rings or 3 rings in a way that I get happy. Pekka is a virtuoso.
Yeah.
But when you two improvise together, I get much more out of both juggling and music than when you do 11 balls and he does the number so and so by Bach or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. And something else was to my mind also about this life, and it disappeared.
But this idea of perfection in today's world,
Yeah, I mean, we are so bound, we are so, in a bad way, limited by how things shall be, or how things have to be,
right,
or how things necessarily are, that we want to breathe again, to move again, to come alive. We are half dead, all of us, for different reasons, even physically half dead by all this stuff that we get into us and on us and under us and whatever. and by fright and war and everything, all this shit is kind of pressing, and we need to. And any art that brings options is the thing, and that is everything that is perfect. Perfect means literally it's done.
Mm.
It's done. And
Perfect. Yeah. There's no more point to.
no more.
Yeah.
There's no more to it.
Yeah. The final chord comes, and you didn't listen to it because you were waiting for that.
Yes.
So this comes, and then you go, I have been waiting for it, but you couldn't play that first. So now, and then you make the last chord, and then it was
I've heard it.
perfect. Yeah, but even then, when it actually does come in the end, at the full conclusion of the symphony or so, and the last chord comes, and you know it's done, and life continues, and the person will stand, and maybe they play another one or whatever. But for one moment, we go, this was one moment of duration, as Bergson would have called it.
Yeah.
It will still go, but this is an event in time, and it was perfect.
And a simple thing which I'm listening now quite a lot to pre-Baroque music, to Renaissance music, and it often does not end at the end note.
Oh yeah.
But it ends up in the air. And it's such a relief.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gives me the option to kind of make the last movement or step or thought or whatever.
Breath or whatever, yeah.
Whatever.
You have to complete it.
Yeah.
With something.
It's open.
Open-ended, yeah.
Wow. Whereas all these Beethovens and Bachs and all, they all end at the boom.
This was a perfect piece of music, and it's not open. So can I weave that back in again then to my pet peeve at the moment? So the difference between abstract and concrete, and even this is an abstract thing, but to say something concrete, and then like the difference between Miro painting and abstract painting and what Jackson Pollock did when he threw the paint on the canvas, which I find like it's Jackson Pollock's work, is it's important that somebody did it, but I don't connect to it in that same way. And he is also a man who has, I used a shorthand for, I mean, Jackson Pollock is a bold example of me because he is very well respected, but his works are untitled, and it's just a string of numbers. And this is to me like it's gone, I just threw some paint on, quite literally onto the canvas. I don't even name it, it's untitled 64. You deal with it. I just did it. And now if you like, and that's one end of the spectrum, and the other one is somebody who actually has something like Rembrandt or even, you know, Magritte or
but Miro is perfect because he ends by trying to make a 1.5 meter long line. Again and again he tries to make the perfect line.
I didn't know that.
No, I saw it. There is a film about him, and I saw that, and it was absolutely respectable.
Yeah.
And the thing with Pollock, the art form of Jackson Pollock is dance, not painting.
Yeah, well, there you
And
go.
you see the film where he makes this, how he, with his long legs in jeans and his t-shirt, dances over the canvas and spilling out the colors. Of course, the trace, the colors, they are fun, but how he moves is wow.
But wait.
This connects to just because this connects then to we were trying today to talk again about, we've had a whole 2-hour conversation about this on the podcast where we tried to understand skill, and but now it's going more specific into this, and I'm wondering whether there is a connection between that this is abstract when you look at it here, but it had a strong intention when it was made. And this was what you were saying, it's an abstract narrative that you used the example of, you did a show one time based on the death of your grandfather and your respect of him, and then through some odd choice you ended up, he always gave me $20 and I used number 20, but for you that connected to the thing, and it never was meant to come out that people go, oh, interesting.
Oh, sorry your grandfather died.
Yeah, nobody was going to see the show and say that. And then, like, and I guess I don't even really know what it is that I'm asking in this question, but it's like I just see so much abstract art where I feel like the art is not saying anything at all.
But
that's true. That's true.
But to confront that, just to back up what both you said, or like go back. So you had said, Jackson Pollock splashes the paint on the canvas. It's untitled number 36, and it's up to you to deal with it. But isn't the narrative, because that he dared to splash paint on the canvas, and that was a revolutionary act of its time. Mm-hmm. It was in a context. Isn't that potentially inspiring to you?
Yeah, and that is why.
Is that what you were kind of just asking?
Yes. But because I used Jackson Pollock, I muddled what I wanted to say. Because I wanted to say that if people don't have an idea, they do something abstract. And then you just like, oh, what does your juggling mean? Oh, I just did all this. Why did you do it? I don't know. And that is, like you were saying, that might be a valid thing, but it also means it leaves to me like, is this enough to just do it like that? Because what I feel like in the example that I say, like Picasso didn't paint the very odd faces because he didn't know how to paint. He wanted to explore something more in it.
We're right there, right? Maybe you kind of uncovered something.
Maybe.
It's pretty confusing to me. But like when you say, okay, the juggler didn't know what to do, so they did something abstract. Maybe we could even disagree with that.
Yeah.
Because maybe they didn't do anything abstract or concrete. They just didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like you could make a concrete choice, or sorry, I shouldn't use that word. You can make a clear choice and say, this is abstract, but you did it on purpose. You did it, right? Like you said, I'm going to make this abstract. Whereas the juggler who does something and it ends up being abstract by default, they didn't really make a choice, and they could maybe have been better.
This is it. I went to a friend's Pollock went wrong in the way that he thought that will is the thing, whereas fine art is about emotions and not about will force. But this dead end alley for many art forms is there, and it's much nicer than the dead end alley to do something new, which is so stupid. And then I was the other day at an exhibition on an art school because a friend's daughter was in this art school and she wanted me to come. So we went there, and there was a lot of abstract. And there were also her paintings. They were also abstract, but with an intention. And I could see the intention. And an intention is what is needed, whether abstract or not.
Interesting, yeah.
I would even say if the intention is there and becomes visible or audible or whatever, noticeable, then it is not abstract in the way we talk when we say it's only abstract and nonsense. There is abstract nonsense and there is abstract with an intention.
So we could I could propose a language and say that the juggler who did something because they didn't know what to do, it was abstract. We could just say it was confused. Yeah. Or it was confusing.
Also,
so they did
without
something
intention,
confusing.
They didn't have, and intention is better because I keep thinking it's like there is no idea in this, but it's not necessarily that it's an idea. It is that there is an intention, and this is why I said it's a bold choice. I said about choosing Jackson Pollock, and afterwards I said it's the wrong choice to talk about him because it might be an idea that don't talk to me, and it might be that he is putting will into it, but at least he had an extremely strong intention.
Yes.
And this is why his work cost $60 million. So it was a wrong. And I guess this is maybe what I'm after then. Why is there that's a good language. Why is there so little intent where the question is just being asked? Where I feel like I'm watching this and I feel like that's why I use that language. I'm just doing some circus. If you like, it's like you deal with it, or if you find something valuable, great. If not, I haven't even thought about that.
I really appreciate, I love it every time you say it. Yeah, I've loved it ever since you first said it. I heard you say it a year ago, or 2 years ago, where you say, Untitled 34, here, this is it, here, this is this, you deal with it.
Yeah.
I love that language. I think that's really appropriate. And one thing that just struck me is that thing we were talking about at lunch with Victor now, where we are in a society, we're in a culture, we're in a community, and we have familiar tropes and we have familiar structures in our lives that if I tell you, Ivar, I'm going to go see a theater play tonight, you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to go into a building that's a darkened room with chairs facing this way. There's a stage, there's lights, right? Because we know what theater is. And so I think a lot of people get away with being able to be lazy because they rely heavily on these structures that we are familiar with. So these circus students who haven't thought through their act, and they just come out and waft around on the tissue, or they just juggle some stuff and put it down and pick up some other stuff, and now the hoop is isolated, and now over here the hoop is spinning, and I'm like, well, what the fuck? I thought the hoop didn't move, and now it's moving, and there was no transition between the two images. They're just relying heavily on your sympathy for the format. Because you're gonna read into it, not in that case of you deal with it, but it's not just you on your own dealing with it. You're dealing with it within the structure that we are in. So if it's in a variety show, if it's in a variety show, you have the host comes out. So necessarily, what they do at the beginning is their beginning. Was it intentionally thought out as a beginning? Maybe not. Did they really think about how they're entering the stage? Maybe not. But it became the beginning, and we read into that. But I just had this epiphany of we're not reading into it from nothing. We're reading into it from the framework of where we're viewing it. And I was talking at lunch about you go see a stand-up comedian at a comedy club, and the stand-up comedian comes on stage and takes the microphone, and it's just okay. And the audience is yeah, here we go. Okay, oh, he's going to do the thing. Whereas if I go in my street show and I take the microphone and I go, okay, people are just
what?
Okay, yeah, what's going to happen next? And the same thing for a clown show. You're going to go see Nale do a clown show. You're going to go see a clown festival. When the person comes out the curtain, like this, people are going to laugh. Yeah. It's a clown festival. So we're dealing with those things, but we're dealing with the context they're presented in. And so this idea of I just go sculpture. Look at it, right? And then we have some sort of social codes of reverence. If it was on a white pillar in a white room and it said art gallery, we would at least probably have the reverence or respect enough to look at it for half a second, and internally we would think that's stupid, but at least we wouldn't just automatically dismiss it as it's sitting on Ivar's table in his living room as easily, right? Because we have these structures, and I just had this thought that I've seen it before a lot, where people get away with a lot. They get away with a lot because they rely heavily on these structures.
Oh yes.
And when those structures aren't there, then it does fall apart. I mean, you see that all the time with performers who then do their act. I don't know.
But we also look for other structures. Again, he's running through Stockholm or motion walking in the New York streets. Is going out of the structures.
Well, I just think it's just this awareness of I'm in this structure, and these structures afford me these liberties, and I can play with those things in the best of ways, like you do. Just because you're aware of it's this consciousness thing. I'm conscious of I'm in this context, and what does this context afford me, and what does this context kind of limit me, and can I twist those concepts? That's where we get a lot of fun things in performance, because people are twisting all this immersive stuff nowadays where the audience moves around, because they're twisting that concept of our normal expectation of what an audience does. I mean, it could be the other way around. Imagine we grew up in a world where every single show the audience walked from one place to the other, and then one person comes up one day and goes, I bought a bunch of chairs. Whoa, there's a revolution happening in New York City right now. Get this, Frodo, there's a show. Yeah. And everybody sits down for the whole thing. Yeah. And it's a hot sensation, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, right?
I mean, yeah.
No, but there are these magicians who do on you sit around the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a concept.
Yeah.
It's a great concept.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this we don't need an audience of 500. We'd rather prefer an audience of 5
Yeah. Or one.
or 1.
Yeah.
Maybe 2.
And
Yeah.
You did Frodo did one-on-ones basically in Vegas.
Yeah, well, not 1-on-1, but like maybe 20 or so.
Was it so
Yeah.
big?
Mm.
I have such a twisted memory of that.
It's a small room, so maybe 15, 20. It would probably be over full at 25, but
Maybe the time you took me, it was just 4 or 5 people. I
yeah,
remember.
but it varied. It was whoever they got in. Sometimes
It was so cool. There was the main theater, and there was like a little hidden room, and then would you pull people in?
No, because I was in the other show.
Right.
So I came out. I was finishing the other show. I quickly changed costume, and then I went into the small room, and then the ushers pulling from people who were waiting to go to the next show or whatever, they would be invited into this room. And then I would come in and I would do one of the acts that I did was the rope act that I can show you. And then the other one was the spoon act that we talked about in a separate performance. So in between, there was 3 shows per night, and I did, in between the first and the second, I did a 5-minute show in the small room, 7 minutes.
Wow.
And in between the other one, I did.
And you weren't doing the blindfolded guns.
No, this
was.
was.
It was so good.
This was Lorenzo.
Yeah, I saw that one. That was
Lorenzo
really
Pinzoni,
cool.
one of the pickle son of one of the main.
Yes,
people.
Lorenzo, of course.
Lorenzo,
Fuck,
yeah.
So you would go in the room and he would blindfold everybody, and then he would tell a story about the Wild West, and he would shoot guns next to your head, and
Well,
you'd
he
fire.
tells a story about a fire.
Yeah,
and then
you'd feel
me
the fire.
and David and a few people were in there.
Oh, yeah.
Making effects. So everyone had
Oh, I didn't know that.
blindfolds on, and we lit paper on fire.
Yeah.
And blew it out. And then there would be the smoke
Smell.
of burn.
Yeah, it was
burning
intense.
would go on, and there were some noises we made.
Yeah.
And things. So you would get audio enhancement, and also you would blow on people, and they would win, and there was a couple of different things. You turn on a fan and a few things. So you would have sensory experiences whilst being blindfolded and hearing a story.
It was pretty intense, I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just intimidating also to have a blindfold on in a sort of public space
And not knowing what's gonna happen.
You don't quite feel, you're always afraid that you're gonna abuse the fact that they have it and go, oh, grab them, punch them or something like.
You're vulnerable. I
You're
mean,
very vulnerable, and usually I
To physical
find
attack.
in these days when you see that kind of stuff in the show too, there's going to be something like that where they.
Yeah.
It's so easy. They're
I see
so
what you mean.
vulnerable, and it's the reason why people don't want to do it. People don't want to come on stage because they think that you're going to make fun of them, and then they come up, and then people make fun of them, and it's just this terrible cycle, and I
totally.
don't want any part in this. But that was very nice. There was nothing went over the limit. It was just these things of they got, because then you have the paper that's still smoking, and you just walk past, and you can see people just going.
Yeah.
You go, because all of a sudden it is so strong, you actually breathed in some smoke. It wasn't like
Totally.
just fake.
And it was a really
perfume.
good,
It was-
really good, intense story.
Yeah.
And also just to say you're in like a little
He tells a story about how the family circus that he ran and why they ended up in Las Vegas, and there was a fire and at the circus, and that because there is a wooden board also on the wall there which says the Pinzoni family. No, it's not whatever the name was. It was because it wasn't his real name. It was the name of the made up in the show. Family circus or whatever, but it was half burnt, this thing, which was the only thing that was left, and it was nailed on the wall inside there.
But you're like in Las Vegas in this hidden room, and you're seeing this like art.
Yeah,
Shit.
you push up in the mirror.
Fucking
And
amazing.
you go inside, and you push the door open like that. It was very
Amazing that you're in Vegas seeing that. That's so cool.
nice. Yeah,
Gave a different context.
completely different context. Yeah.
Do you wanna do some?
Yeah, let me try to do it because the day before we left.
And there the conversation just cut off because what happened in the room was that I did a performance for Ivar. So it was just Ivar and Jay sitting there, and I showed him a routine that you can actually find that routine on YouTube if you go to YouTube and search for Captain Frodo and the Ropes of Reality. And there's another version of the same one called World of Education and Magic. So if you search Captain Frodo and World of Magic, then you will find it there. So I did a performance for him, and I hope that this is a conversation that wasn't kind of it wasn't stating anything that was already thought out ahead of time. I am the guilty one at pushing towards trying to grapple with this notion of abstract and concrete performance, where I feel like my performance style is very concrete and linear and often has story, and I think so much about meaning and I've been having some great conversations privately with Jay and a girl, Kertu, a Finnish woman who does some very interesting circus work as well, and she's working on a new show where she is sort of talking about how previous work has been done without putting the full intent into it, or having it mean anything, not being worried about that, but let the work speak for itself. And then through some changes, she is now making a show where she's very interested in the meaning and what it means and everything. So I'm hoping to have her on a podcast in not too long to explore some of these ideas further, because I am still really wanting to understand and learn from people about abstraction and how to grasp that in performances. Maybe it's connected to my kind of, maybe it's the fact that I have been within a what is it called, like there's always money involved or whatever, like I'm in a commercial kind of, a lot of my work is done in commercial kind of venues. I haven't had much art space, I haven't had art grants or so I'm always needing it to be instantly gratifying and interesting to the audience, because I'm often just flung in a commercial show that they've bought tickets to, or I'm at some event or whatever. So I'm really interested to hear what Kertu might have to say, and what Jay, maybe we should have some explorations of that. But in not too long now, we're going to go on to my exploration of play, and you could hear it in today's episode that I'm already talking quite a lot about play, and I'm going away in a few days now to Holland to do a show for the Christmas weeks and Christmas days with the Ashton brothers in Haarlem in Holland, and while I am there I'm going to start doing the recordings of what I have written. So then finally it's going to start probably in maybe beginning of February or something. The episodes will start dropping on showmanship and play, and until then subscribe to the Instagram account, The Way of the Showman at Instagram, so I can reach you guys. It would be lovely. And if you find yourself in need of a Christmas present, then you can go on to just click onto the show notes, and you will find a link there to, you can buy some amazing Way of the Showman apparel. Get yourself a t-shirt or get a hoodie to stay warm this Christmas season. Anyway, your time and attention is of course all I really want. So until next time, take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.